So I would think that making more money is better than making less money.
No, I feel really strongly about that. I would go out on a limb and say that making more money is better than making less money.
OBJ is on it. He knows what's up.
I didn't ask for 20, but 4 is not enough. I still I put out a tweet. I mean it pretty genuinely. I bet you Brandon Beane is the guy who offered $4 million.
I would not be surprised at all. That sounds totally plausible.
All right, OBJ.
It's just like,
here's $4 million. You can make 6 if you do this, or 8 if you do that, or 10 if we do this. And there,
right.
Which I mean,
and I can just totally see being like, we don't have a lot of room, we don't have a lot of money to spend, but we'd love to have you.
Well, hell, I mean, no joke. That is the deal that he made Jordan Poyer. There's a handful of incentives, kind of like the same deal that Deonte Harty got.
I mean, he's right. It's like I'm glad Poyer signed. I'm glad that I was worried for a little bit there that seemed that maybe he was had some sour grapes about not getting signed earlier and everything, but it just seems like Beane knew what Poyer's market was going to be, or at least knew that it wasn't going to be as high as Jordan was hoping. So I'm sure there were offers made during the season, and it's just well, you've earned the right to test the market, which is the nicest way I've ever heard someone say. Go see what you can find.
I mean, honestly, it's not terribly different than the gamble Baltimore's making with Lamar Jackson. It's that, hey, how many teams do you think are going to put out there a super high guaranteed deal to wait and see if we're going to match it while their existing quarterback can see that they're putting out that offer? Because we're going to bet it's less than you think. And that's the gamble that they're making.
Yeah, I'm super interested to see, because I mean, you mentioned this when you guys were looking at that chart of how teams have fared so far in free agency, their losses and gains. I forget what the chart was called, but
Kevin Cole, the fact who used to be with PFF, put it together. He's actually coming on with Aaron and I Wednesday.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, and the fact that Baltimore was down, I mean, you said it, it's like they don't, what can they do until they know what's going on with Lamar? It's like they're handcuffed right now, which is giving Lamar more leverage in the situation, right? I mean, or does he have a choice, I guess, with the tag?
I mean, so we've seen players do this. Kirk Cousins did it. Kirk Cousins played it out, wasn't happy with the offer from Washington, got tagged, play for a season under the tag, didn't like it again, got tagged again, and then played under that tag again, and then went out and got 3 years fully guaranteed from Minnesota. Everybody talks about Deshaun Watson like it's the first guaranteed deal ever, but Kirk Cousins got 3 years fully guaranteed from Minnesota when he went there. So we have a precedent. It's just that Kirk Cousins was willing to put in those 2 years under the franchise tag, and it's why Kirk Cousins is going to be a Hall of Famer business of sports, member. He's making tons of money because he was willing to put in that time to do it. Lamar, understandably wants to get some of those guarantees in place, but he doesn't actually have that much leverage, because if he threatens to sit out, he has to show up for I think it used to be 5 games, it might be 6 games now, to get the accrued season in the NFLPA. Because if he doesn't do it, he's just under the regular first year franchise tag next year. So it's Baltimore's not in a great spot, but I do think that he doesn't have that much leverage to work with.
So this is just a chill Saturday night space. If anyone listening wants to jump in and chat with us, by all means, hit the request to speak button. Kevin, I was a little worried that we scared you off when we were teasing you about Clubhouse, but I'm glad you jumped in.
I'm glad you didn't see us struggle at the beginning trying to figure out how to get people added and unmuted, because he would have made fun of us and told us to go to Clubhouse.
For those listening, Kevin, you've probably seen him in Spaces before. He loves it, and he loves to try to get us to do it too, and we love him for it. I mean, it's a lot of fun, and so we're like, yeah, let's do Spaces tonight, and everyone's like, oh, you guys caught it from Kevin. We're like, yep, he's our Spaces guy, and then Kevin comes in and says, well, we really should be doing Clubhouse. I'm like, dude, nice.
That's fantastic.
And I told him that he's like a weed dealer outside of middle school, just trying to get us hooked on one thing and then push something else
He's a
on
pusher.
us.
He's a pusher.
What's up, Kevin? Man, glad you jumped in.
What's going on, everyone? Just enjoying Spaces. I think the biggest problem with Spaces is the technical glitches too. Like, that's underrated. That like half the time your co-hosts can't accept people, then they get booted. Then if Greg goes down, this entire space goes down.
I don't understand. What's the point of having a co-host if when I leave they can't continue to host it? Like, I don't understand. What's the point of having a co-host?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not the Zoom protocol. They don't have like pass it or continuing the chat. Like, you can't just dip.
But if we were on playback, we could all be talking and watching the Texas game and like flipping to other stuff on commercials, like. And
Kevin,
correct.
And actually getting paid, but we'll talk more about that
Big
later.
budget for Texas. I needed that one. Up 7 with 35 seconds left. I feel good.
All right.
That's right.
Go Greg's bracket.
So there's a couple different rumors. I heard, the annual tradition of tracking the Pagula jet that had come up again earlier. There was the Pagula jet went from Nashville to LA, so everybody's trying to connect dots. Like, is it linebacker time? Are they going from Zach Cunningham to Bobby Wagner? I think half the NFL players, are in either Miami or Vegas or LA in the offseason. So LA could be anybody. Or it could just be, rich people using their private plane.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, they're in Nashville. I mean, obviously, because they've got the country music label there. They've got a studio. I think they've got a PSE office there. Like, they got a lot of, business in Nashville.
Do we know that OBJ's in LA?
I do. Well, I do think the workout that he just did was in LA.
I thought we just said it's not a football thing.
I just debunked the Nashville one because they have like one of the hottest selling country artists right now.
You never know. I mean,
but
shout
her out, Kev. What's her name?
Kelsey Ballerini.
There it is.
Good for them having a rising country superstar on their label. Get more money in the coffers. The more money that the Pagulas make in any other area, roundabout helps us. That he keeps cutting checks. So whatever makes them money, God bless them. Let's go.
He just gave it all to Von Miller.
Yeah, we just cut a bunch of checks to a bunch of people. Stephon Diggs got a check. Matt Milano got a check. Josh Allen got a check. Von Miller got a check. As long as
Connor McGovern got a check.
Deonte
Harty got a check.
If as long as Terry Pagula,
Ike Bucker got a check.
Terry
right?
Pagula's going to keep cutting checks. I'm good. So, what do you guys think on these remaining couple positions that we haven't seen? I know there are a couple lists floating around of available defensive tackles, available linebackers, available running backs. Where's your needs list now that we're a week into free agency?
I'm dying at receiver. I still want to see an upgrade there. I mean, after being called Harty, the fourth receiver, I still think there's a needed receiver position on the roster.
So which direction, though? Do you want to see a like DJ Chark, Nelson Aguilar type that pushes Gabe Davis, or do you want to see like whoever it might be, but that could try to push in the slot? I mean, Alameda Zacchaeus is out there, Mecole Hardman. Obviously, you could bring back a Jamison Crowder or someone like that. Which side, which type of receiver would you want?
I'm trying to push Gabe Davis, not just because I'm against Gabe. I'm actually a Gabe Davis fan, maybe one of the only ones remaining, especially in spaces. But I'm pushing him just because of the situation with Tremaine this year. where I'd like to have a boundary in the system going. Hardy played 60%
More
on the
outside the
boundary
spot.
too,
Yeah, more outside
which
the
is an
spot.
interesting, which is an interesting nugget for him, and that's kind of what they want out of their fourth receiver. But for me, it's just a matter of I'm interested in seeing what Shakir can do as in the slot too. And I'm pushing Gabe. I want to push him, and I think that they have a natural fit. They've taken OBJ out to dinner. They've wined and dined them in Buffalo in December. By all purposes, and even some reporters are saying, Buffalo's very much in the
So are
mix
you saying
still after
you want
liking
to
what
see
they've seen.
6 on the roster because you got Diggs, Davis,
Yes,
Shakir, Hardy. You want to see one more signing and one draft pick?
yeah, I feel really good about
Yeah,
that.
and obviously you can balance it in what kind of player if you sign an Aguilar or a DJ Chark. I think that the draft seems to be pretty heavy in smaller, faster, twitchier guys that have slot ability. There's a ton of, Zay Flowers and Jaden Reed and those. Obviously, we'd love a Jackson Smith and Jigba or something like that. But assuming it's going to be more of a Josh Downs or a Jaden Reed or Tank Dell or whoever it might be. I think that if you got an outside threat, you could then have a developmental guy there in the slot.
Yeah, I think OBJ is a possibility still. I'm more likely it's going to be like Kumaro or Crowder coming back, to be honest with you,
Yeah.
and then a draft
Which
pick.
honestly,
But
as long
yeah,
as I care about the premium draft pick more than I care about the signing because I don't think that I do think a
hmm
DJ Chark or a Nelson Aguilar, that type of receiver would be great. I think it would be good. They could contribute. They could be a piece of it. I care more about having a premium investment that is developing whether Gabe Davis takes a big step or not as Stephon Diggs start to age. This is a really smart time to layer in a first or second round, a top 3 round pick, day 1 or day 2, one of those top 100 picks as a wide receiver. I care more about that than the free agent, but I would love both.
yeah. hmm I'm really intrigued by the linebacker situation. Like, super intrigued. I just so I think a lot of us at Cover when we're talking about the most likely, the most predictable move was adding a guard, and
Yep.
that happened on the first day. Um, the other one, I mean, obviously, if you don't have Edmunds, what are you doing at linebacker? And I'm just surprised, like that. It seems to me like the Bills don't feel nearly as much urgency about it as the fan base does.
Yeah, Aaron keeps trying to half tease me, half I don't know if he's serious, like that they may feel more comfortable with a winner coming out of Terrell Bernard, Terrell Dotson, and Balin Spector than what the fans are. And I don't I can't tell if I don't believe that or if I don't want to believe that. I don't know which one. I haven't decided yet. So
It's like not the opposite of
yes,
wish casting, like
correct.
wish denying or something.
I'm just
There's some
purely in
better word. I'll come
denial
up with
about,
it.
the fact that there is evidence that what he's saying is accurate, but I don't want it to be true, so I'm going to pretend it's not. I do think that there's a piece of it where we'll know by their actions, and obviously we heard pretty direct reports that they were in on Drew Tranquil, and I can't fault if you're going to take a 1 year prove it deal. There are a lot of teams that players would pick the Bills over to take 1 year prove it deals, but we can't be mad if the 1 year prove it deal taken was with the defending Super Bowl champions. Like, you
Can we
know,
talk about that one though? Like they have two studs and a promising rookie.
yeah, yeah.
So are you questioning the Chiefs or are you questioning
No, I
Tranquil
don't.
for
Chiefs do whatever they want. I'm questioning Drew Tranquil where
Yeah, does he
he's
for
think
the
he's
fit
picking to
there.
playing
go? Yeah.
over
Yeah,
Bolton? Do we think he's playing over Gay? It is an interesting bet on himself.
Especially if you're on a prove it deal. I mean, you
and
need
with
Yeah,
Chanel
snaps
Leo
every
Chanel
year.
looked solid at
filling
times.
too.
But either way, I mean, Bolton is absolutely the starter. So he thinks he can beat out Gay and Chenal for that second spot.
He must.
Which I don't think is crazy. I'm not as big. I don't think Willie Gay's all that special. He's okay in coverage. And I think Chenal's limited as well. So I don't think it's crazy. I would pick Tranquil over those two if I was if I was Spagnuolo. I would start Drew Tranquil over those two. But it is interesting. That is a higher risk play to win the starting job than betting against Terrell Bernard, Terrell Dodson, and Balin Spector. So he certainly would have had a higher likelihood of starting if he took the. I'm going to assume it was basically the same offer that Beane was making is what Brett Veach was making. So it is interesting that Tranquil took it.
Jim Wickens, thanks for jumping in. What's going on?
Hey, so I have a question because I've heard or read on Twitter about possible scheme changes on defense with the loss of Edmunds. How would you see a scheme change? Still 4-2-5? Would it be 3-3-5? Is it a different kind of linebacker? Like, could you project what the scheme changes would be? And then what skill sets do we have or not have to fit that scheme change?
I think it's really hard to predict what the scheme will be until we know who the players will be. But I agree that we should expect to maybe see something in the way of a scheme change. You can't lose your defensive play caller and your middle linebacker who also wore the green dot and, just expect to run it back with the same scheme. Edmunds has a unique skill set that I don't think you can replace at this point. I mean, Jack Campbell seems like the closest, but I don't like that idea, to be honest with you. I would rather go with someone like Simpson and then lean into those scheme changes. If you're going to tell me he's the most talented linebacker in the draft class and he reminds you of Shaq Thompson, bring that guy in and do something different on defense.
I think everything that Jim asked and what he read and everything Chris just said is totally logical. And I also expect absolutely no changes. I'll believe that there's going to be sweeping changes to Sean McDermott's scheme when I see it and not 1 second earlier. I do think that if no one presents themselves, whether that's through the draft, through also, we have to realize they could just go out there and sign Anthony Walker or Deion Jones or Bobby Wagner or, one of Denzel Perriman or any other Band-Aid free agent and draft a guy. And could you see subtle changes in the responsibilities that they put on Milano or the safeties or Taron Johnson in the middle of that scheme that maybe there were liberties they could take because of how much range Tremaine Edmunds could cover? But I think what fans think of, and I'm including myself, what all of us think of when we hear words like scheme change, you think of things of what Jim just talked about does that mean we're going to go back to a 4-3 base? Does that mean we're going to change to Dave Aranda's 3-3-5 from Baylor, which I won't lie, I am a huge proponent of. I would love to run a 3-3-5 in today's NFL. I don't think any of those are remotely on the table. I think that when they think about scheme changes, and to your point, Chris, about, hey, we have to do some things different because we don't have the human that has the crazy range and wingspan and ability that Tremaine Edmunds does. You're right. It just means that Matt Milano's going to blitz 6% less, and that, now there's a little bit more space that Milano has to hedge towards the middle, and Taron Johnson has to also hedge towards the middle, and both of them have to take one step in further because they had a little more flexibility that Edmunds could cover all of it, and now they don't. And to the layperson, all of us on the broadcast, we're going to notice zero difference, even though psychopaths like Eric are going to be able to point out, like, well, you can actually see that they're now stepping in and they're now consistently one step inside the hash mark. And last year they were actually one step outside the hash mark because Edmunds gave them the flexibility. It's going to be little nuanced stuff like that. They are going.
Yeah, they're shaded over this gap, and
they're going to be a base nickel. And like I said, maybe I'll be wrong, but I will believe that they change from a base nickel when I see it and not a second before.
So Greg, what would it take for us to go to that Baylor 3-3-5? Like, what personnel is missing on the current defense to do the Baylor 3-3-5?
Multiple
There's a couple
linebackers.
different pieces. One, a perfect example, they ran the 3-3-5 last year with Siaki Ika as their nose tackle, who's like a 6'5", 350-pound bowling ball that can press the pocket and take up two gaps from the middle. That would be nice to have that along with a Daquan Jones or something like that. So, to be completely honest, my dream scenario is you get the Shaq Thompson type, and ideally you have like a Derwin James type, where I would actually run a 3-2-6. But in 3-2-6, it would be three defensive linemen with one true big monster defensive tackle, two edges, two linebackers, three corners, and three safeties. But the safeties, you have more of that hybrid. Poyer basically can play like a linebacker, and you would have a bigger Derwin James type. You would have more, probably more size at line. Obviously, you would want to do it ideally with if you could, it would be with a Tremaine Edmunds and a Jack Campbell, that they could take on more blockers and be able to fit more run fits without needing to be kept clean with just the defensive tackles in front of them. So it's the reason the teams don't do it is because of everything I'm talking about right now. Hey, I could do it if I have Vita Vea and I have Tremaine Edmunds and Fred Warner as my two linebackers, and I have a Derwin James, and my nickel is Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, or my nickel / safety is Chauncey Gardner-Johnson alongside Jordan Poyer. That's the reason that teams don't do it, because I just rattled off a bunch of insane talent that you would need to be able to pull it off. And if you're missing any of those, teams will just pick it apart and go at it.
You know who's got experience in that Baylor 3-3-5?
Terrell Bernard. Hey, I will say I am similar to what Kevin was saying earlier. He's one of the last remaining Gabe Davis supporters. I'm not out on Terrell Bernard.
No one should be out on Terrell Bernard.
Yeah, we haven't
barely
seen enough to know what he is or isn't. And, don't get me wrong, would I have loved if he carved out a role where they trusted him more, especially when we did see some of the injuries at linebacker? Sure, I would have. But I think anyone who's already deciding that they're out is premature in what that can be.
I got to say some stuff about Terrell Bernard and Bills Mafia's opinion about Terrell Bernard, because I feel like it's based on this desire that people have, because mock drafting has become so popular. People like to be right. They like to pick it beforehand. And no one picked Terrell Bernard. So no one was happy about that pick. And the fact is, the Bills had a plan. They drafted this guy for a reason. There's no reason to have any sort of discussion about results yet, because there hasn't been even close to enough of a sample size of him on the field.
You want to? Here, I can reinforce your point. You want to know who people still bring up because they want to be right and just want that confirmation bias? People still bring up Dylan Parham as the guy that they should have picked. You want to know what?
Yeah,
Dylan Parham was fucking horrible. He gave up more pressures than Roger Saffold, Bates, and Spencer Brown. He was horrible.
He gave up the second most pressures in the league for a guard. Second most pressures in the league.
So enamored with being right about their mock draft pick or a guy that they thought was going to be good that they'd rather say, "Oh, I can't believe Beane passed on Dylan Parham and we wasted the pick on Terrell Bernard." You want to know who I am 100% certain is worse than Terrell Bernard? Dylan Parham.
Dylan fucking Parham, man. Maybe he'll develop.
Sure.
It takes a while for linemen. We know that. But, still, based on year one.
Yeah, I wouldn't trade them right now. I wouldn't trade Terrell Bernard for Dylan Parham right now. All right. Who else wants to get me excited?
Yeah, and I
can rant about something else. Somebody ask me something else I can get excited about.
Just extrapolate on Bernard a little bit, though. 17 sacks in college. He's really productive in that Baylor defense.
He's a good blitzer. He's a really good blitzer.
And we did have this preconceived, and let me tell you, let's make this full circle. The number one thing said in Spaces, and I talked to hundreds, I'm not kidding, hundreds to almost 1,000 Bills fans lately, and it's Leo Chenal was this stud middle linebacker that KC drafted. He's a stud. Why wouldn't we take him as more of a natural Bernard or a natural Tremaine Edmunds fit? And guess what KC just went out and did? They just signed Drew Tranquil.
They obviously don't believe in him that much either.
Correct. So the people we're using, you just use Parb, I'm going to use Chenal, are just as much of an unknown or more unknown than Bernard. So I just don't know what the theory was, but I think Chris is right in the fact of it's all about pull up ESPN, pull up CBS, Chris Trapasso, pull up Draft Network, whoever you like, and see where the rankings board is. And you saw Bernard at 110 or 112, and you took him, earlier than you thought at conceivably a will position that you didn't think you needed. And that all that culmination equaled bad pick.
And don't get me wrong, I don't know if it was a good pick, and we don't have any evidence yet that it is a good pick. That is still true. But we also how's the phrasing go that don't mistake the absence of evidence for evidence of absence, or however that goes. Just because we haven't seen it yet doesn't mean we're not going to. You got to be careful not to assume that yet to be able to go there. And I in some of the tweets that people are sending in here, Mike was saying that it's if the current starting Mike is on the roster, he's going to be sick. I don't disagree with him. I really Mark, sorry, it was Mark that said that. I really do hope that our starting Mike
guys, they picked Balin Spector. No, I'm not going to say anything. They picked Balin Spector to be a starter.
Maybe weirder.
I think they picked him with the idea that it's his lottery ticket. Maybe he's got the upside to get there, but I don't think that they had any specific plan that it was going to happen. It's what they do in the draft. They pick these guys that they think might have this upside that just hasn't been realized yet.
It's way more likely that in the sixth round they were hoping he could be Tyler Medikevich, not that he could be Tremaine Edmunds.
He was a seventh rounder too, I think, right? Because Benford was our sixth.
I think there were two.
Do we have 2 6? Both sixes? Because okay.
Maybe he was.
So I have something to build on with what Kevin said about 2 or 3 minutes ago. So if Bernard has a history of being a good blitzer, this defense doesn't tend to blitz. That's my opinion. There might be data to say I'm wrong.
We were very much at the low end. There were stretches where we were the lowest in the NFL. There were a couple games where it was higher, but overall, we are one of the lowest blitzing teams in the league.
Right. So that was where my original question about a scheme change. So blitzing isn't necessarily a scheme, but if Bernard is going to get more playing time and this defense doesn't tend to blitz, what does that look like?
So I'm going to answer that with a weird thing. The very first thing that Eric brought up when all the news came out and we started to connect the dots that it sounded more, we now obviously know now, but early on we were getting indications that Sean McDermott was going to be calling the defense and that we weren't going to hire a defensive coordinator. That we have, I think, 4 former defensive coordinators on the staff, multiple guys who can help build the game plan, that they will probably have Al Holcomb do the run game coordination, and that we will have either Bobby Babbitt Jr. or John Butler do the pass game coordination. They'll build the game plans on game day. The play-by-play play calling will be Sean McDermott. The very first thing that Eric brought up was McDermott's much more aggressive than Leslie Frazier. We've seen it in the games when he took over control of the play calling, and we saw a ton of it in Philadelphia and Carolina when he was in that role previously. So now, does that mean we're all of a sudden going to become, Wink Martindale and one of the highest blitzing teams in the league? No. But Leslie Frazier, by nature, he's still making 55, 60 individual decisions every game where he's deciding what play calls to do. And that, yes, did McDermott chime in here or there or give a hint when he wanted something specifically? Yes. But in general, Frazier was making those decisions on a play-by-play basis. Now having McDermott do that, and he is more aggressive by nature, and we have history showing that. Like he blitzes more often. He takes more exotic coverage scheme chances than what Frazier does. It is likely that that's going to continue, and that, like you said, that's not a scheme change. We're still going to be a 4-2-5 base nickel. But if we see more aggression and more blitzing using those guys differently, I think fans could get excited about that, as that's a difference, even if it's not. I think some people are convinced that we need to go to like a 4-3 base or something like that. It's still a passing league. Every team is a base nickel. Like every team has 5 DBs on the field the vast majority of the time. So I do think that is one area that we could see that more. And I think a lot of fans think of Sean McDermott as a super conservative coach, and there are areas where he is conservative. In his play-by-play play calling history, he is significantly more aggressive than Leslie Frazier.
So, and I just want to throw in there that I didn't mean to say, when I said that Terrell Bernard is a good blitzer, I didn't mean to say that he's only a good blitzer.
Yeah.
He's also really good in coverage, and
He
he's
was
good.
a
He's a rangy
vintage
dude.
player
I mean,
Baylor.
yeah, I mean, you got to think about Terrell Bernard as like a younger Matt Milano. Basically, he's a very similar player, and I mean, Milano has said in interviews that they've worked with Bernard at both, all 3 linebacker positions. Aaron likes to talk about going positionless, and if you think about Bernard and Milano on the field at the same time as the 2 linebackers, I mean, they're such similar players that you almost could mess with. Like with Edmunds and Milano, there's certain tells about what's going to happen based on what side of the field they're on, because they're different players, right? But like with Milano and Bernard, you might be able to, kind of like you can do with the safeties, and the way that they mix up what those guys' responsibilities are. Maybe you see some of that at the second level
And
of the
I'll
defense
even
too.
add one other piece to that. I think and I'm guilty of this because a couple people chimed in. I wish I could give credit on who brought up the point, but there's been a couple people who have chimed in with it that although we still need some of what that Mike linebacker role is, like there are pieces of that we can't replace. It doesn't, what you call it, what the label is not as critical as others. I had a couple back and forths with people who were saying, "Oh, well, why do we even need a Mike anymore? Because there's only 2 linebackers, so there's no middle." And I had to explain that that's not actually the case. Tremaine Edmunds was almost always in between Matt Milano and Taron Johnson. Taron Johnson is the other outside linebacker, and that when you're the Mike, you're the middle. It's because you're in between those 2, between the strong side and the weak side. And that the best analogy I could give on why it matters is flipping it around. Why do you think quarterbacks spend so much time trying to identify the Mike? Oh, 53 is the Mike, 58 is the Mike, 49 is the Mike. Why do you think they work so hard to identify it? Because it's
Always
important. Like the reason is
sets
because
of
it's really
protections.
freaking important, and you're trying to figure out who's responsible for what. So trying to be like, oh, well, we don't really need that anymore. We do. We need it. That role is still going to exist, even if it changes or tweaks. The one thing that could, and this came up when we started talking about platoons, like, oh, Bobby Wagner isn't what he used to be, but he's actually still awesome in rundowns and a good leader. I wonder if you could platoon him and Bernard. And that brought up, oh, yeah, but then who's calling the defense? And that's where this came from, was you don't have to be the Mike linebacker to wear the green dot. So if we want to have some creativity in that spot, Matt Milano doesn't have to move to Mike linebacker to be the play caller and wear the green dot helmet. We know Matt Milano's going to, the only thing that matters for the green dot is guy who is going to be on the field every single play. Like that's the only criteria. You could actually have it be anyone. It could be Jordan Poyer. It could be Micah Hyde. Like anyone who's just going to be on the field every single play can wear the green dot, because that's really the only criteria, is a guy who understands the defense and is going to be on the field every play, because you can't have a guy rotating. You can't have a defensive end who rotates in and out, is off the field 40% of the time, be the play caller, because you need somebody who's there. So that's actually one thing that in my mind was kind of liberating, in that, oh yeah, I guess we could do some different things with a platoon, with some different positionless ideas, and just have Matt Milano wear the green dot and be the guy who calls the defense, even if he continues to just be an awesome weak side linebacker and doesn't convert to Mike or change anything that way.
We're going from disguising coverages to disguising the mic. I can feel it. I'm just going to go down this rabbit hole of Bernard and Milano because that's what we got right now. Chris Janke. Chris Janke, thank you for the question. Do you guys think it's okay to go into the draft with, say, one glaring hole on the roster, as long as it's not a premium position? And this is what has got me so like intrigued by the linebacker situation because of how big of a hole it seems. A Tremaine Edmunds pterodactyl-sized hole in our roster, and it hasn't been addressed. And so I just feel like maybe they're not as concerned as we are. And if you talk about premium positions, linebacker is not a premium position traditionally, in this these days in the league.
Two positions that teams historically very regularly can plug second and third round picks in to start from day one are linebacker and guard. We see it all the time. Like, it is super, super common that second or third round picks come in and start from day one at linebacker and guard. So it's a position where, like you said, we've had a couple times where we've had genuinely glaring holes. Obviously, 2018, we did not have anyone who could even remotely play middle linebacker, and it telegraphed trading up for Tremaine Edmunds. We've had, do you want to call it last year? Last year we had Dane Jackson still coming back in that spot. I think some people saw it as a pretty glaring need, but I think a lot of people, I had a ton of people telling me that, Brandon Beane doesn't believe in investing in a second cornerback spot. We're never going to see him take a premium investment in the second cornerback spot. And then he took a first round pick there. So I don't know if we would compare, Dane Jackson to Terrell Dodson and Terrell Bernard. Like, is that similar in your mind, Chris? I mean, Dane Jackson had more starting experience in either of those guys. He had just started for almost a whole year.
I don't think of Dane Jackson as on the same level as Terrell Dodson, if that's what you're like. I feel like I have a higher, I feel like Dane is more important to the defense than Terrell. No offense or anything.
Dane Jackson started almost an entire season. Like, we had an entire year of him being a starter to lean on and to see. So, I mean, it certainly was feasible.
If you look at guard, too, to your point, Greg, 3 for 37 combined between the two guards, cumulative value between the two guards right now. So they went out and decided to give medium tier value to it. So to me, that's like them addressing it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, we're spending, what do you want to call it, like $11, $12 million a year at guard? Like, that's about the average value of what we're paying Bates and McGovern, like the $11, $12 million. Yeah. It's like legitimate money. It's not crazy, but it's legitimate money.
I'm glad that they made that.
Top 10 overall in O-line, too. Yeah. O-line spending.
Yeah. And they did that with Saffold last year, too. I mean, they definitely feel like they need to spend some money on, someone with reps in the league to be your starting guy, and then they draft those guys to develop behind them.
I don't want to belabor the linebacker spot. My last point is that I believe we will see a signing at linebacker before the draft. I don't think it's going to be.
Who's hungry?
Yeah, I mean, I would guess it might be kind of a Deonte Harty level signing, like a guy that's like, oh, all right, I guess he works. Like, not somebody who's probably on the radar, not somebody who is a huge name, and mainly because there's not a lot of those guys out there right now. But somebody who maybe is a slight notch above Bernard and Dodson, but also doesn't stop you from seeing how the draft falls, but maybe lessen some of the pressure that, like, I don't think a lot of people see Jack Campbell as worthy of the 27th pick. And I don't want to see them in a spot where they're like, well, crap, we don't think he's going to make it to 59. So I guess we have to. I think that they do something where it lets them, ease that tension and pressure to be like, hey, maybe we wait for Deon Henley. Maybe we do like Trenton Simpson. We'll see where it falls. And if one of them make it to 59, great. But if not, we're okay. And we're going to be able to survive. And maybe that is Bobby Wagner. Maybe it is. I know there's plenty of concerns with that. Maybe it's Denzel Perriman. Maybe it's, again, we rattle off the names that are out. There's actually a fair amount of linebackers that are still out there that would be functional in that spot. And then you could draft whoever and see how those guys come in. But I do expect there to be a signing before the draft.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I was kind of thinking along those lines that it's going to be someone that no one's talking about. And for a second there, I was like, I want to look into these guys more. And I was like, nah, I don't care if I predict it or not. I'll just see who they sign and
I'm
look
going to
into
give
them then.
Kevin, this is a tip for you for content for your show coming up. What we should do is go back and look at all of our signings last year and at what point did they happen? Because right now we're 4 days into free agency and people are now acting, or it's hard for your mind not to see it as like done and over with. And be like, well, our free agency's over. Now we're on to the draft. Be like, well, there's actually a ton of people who haven't signed yet. Like when I say ton, the majority of free agents have not signed yet. More free agents are going to sign than ones who already have. It's just that a lot of the big name ones have signed. So I actually would be curious if we go back and look at all of last year. I think 11 free agents signed last year, maybe 13, something like that. I wonder if we go back and look at the dates of when all those free agents signed, if there are some names that we're like, oh, yeah, I guess at this point last year we hadn't even signed X. And
Crowder signed him
who
on
was it?
March 22nd, for instance.
Yeah, so I mean,
Jamison Crowder.
and obviously injury wise, he didn't pan out that way. But I just think in previous years, I'm curious if there were other guys that were second wave free agents that we're not thinking of now that could still be logical fits.
If you look at one person I really like, I'll shout him out, is Mike Clay in terms of his free
And he's
agent
super
sheet. I think he
helpful,
does a
super
really
helpful.
good job with it. It keeps it really up to date. You could argue rankings, but he does a fairly good job. I mean, his list of linebackers: Bobby Wagner, Rashaan Evans, Perryman, Walker, Morrow, Barr, Deion Jones, Cunningham, Miles
I did a bunch of
Jack.
work on Nicholas Morrow
So there's
2 years
definitely
ago. He's a really interesting fit.
Yeah. Yeah, and I talked to some people in Cleveland who think that Walker would be a huge fit here. They're trying to get him back coming off the quad, but they think that he's be a natural replacement. But he's supposed to be really good. He had a really good coverage year, really good leader. He'd be a really good fit in this defense.
He would be the Deonte Harty to me, of a guy that, like, when the name comes up, most fans are going to go, wait, who the hell is that? And then when a handful of people start dipping into some of the advanced stats and some of the scouts start putting out information, they're going to be, spots where it's like, oh, okay, well, maybe that makes sense. And he's the kind of guy that I don't think you would sign Walker and then maybe draft Campbell, but he's the kind of guy where I'm super intrigued by Deon Henley, former wide receiver conversion. Like, he was a wide receiver in college, like not in high school. He was a wide receiver in college and then moved to linebacker and is now going to be like a day 2 draft pick at linebacker after playing wide receiver. I'm just super intrigued by that specific transition and watching him in coverage. All those drills at the Senior Bowl, especially one-on-ones with running backs and linebackers in space, one-on-one coverage. Like, it is designed to embarrass the linebacker and for the running backs to just look awesome. And Deon Henley was like sticky glue, and they could not get off of him. He was with them step for step every single time. That dude can move in coverage and can lay the lumber in the run game. Like, he's an interesting player, but I would love to let him marinate for a minute, and Anthony Walker would be the perfect kind of guy to be able to have him be there. And again, I don't want to get crazy, but I also don't hate the idea of Bobby Wagner being that guy, and that you kind of platoon them and be like, hey,
Yes.
just follow Wags around everywhere he goes, do everything he does, and learn from him. And also, you're going to come in on all the third downs.
If you look at the draft too, I got Campbell in the 60s, and I'm not trying to be like turnout Berard guy, but you got Campbell in the 60s and a lot of
I
rankings.
do think I
Ones that I
think
trust
our
too.
need has made people shift to now, oh, well, we have to take him in the first, and be like, well, before free agency, I didn't see anybody putting Jack Campbell as a first round pick. Like, he was the day 2 pick. Like, no, he's a good pick, and I've seen some people have him as an early second rounder. I don't think it's crazy that some people had him in the 30s or
that
40s.
Raz
Yeah, and
has
he
helped
did.
him,
He
but
was awesome at the combine. But, like, he was his day 2 pick, and now people are like, well, no, you got to take him in the first if you want him. Well, that isn't true. Like, that didn't dramatically change. So we'll see where that goes. So let's shift to something else besides linebacker here.
yeah. So you were talking about a guy who played wide receiver and transitioned to linebackers. That gives me an excuse to transition back to wide
All right.
receiver real quick because I wanted to say something about Deonte Harty, who I think is a pretty cool signing. I mean, this is a guy who never played wide receiver in high school. He played wide receiver at Assumption, but they didn't actually teach him how to play wide receiver. They were just like, run this route. And that's what he did there. And he only started to learn how to run routes when he got to New Orleans. Now he spends like 15 hours a week, he said in interviews, working on developing the nuances of route running. And he's going to be mentoring with Stephon Diggs, which, I mean, there might be some more upside here. This is a guy who could be really interesting to watch.
He has fun advanced stats too. Like his routes ran from the boundary, like his win rate from the boundary, his
Yeah,
yards of separation.
that chart that's been floating around that has him in the same group as like Amon-Ra St. Brown and I think it was like oh man.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah,
like
yards earned from the boundary. Like that's
It
just
was
encouraging.
A.J. Brown, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Deonte Harty. You know,
I
so
mean,
now
that's
I
sick.
will say, I went back and forth with Nick Underhill and a couple other guys who were big Saints people, and they said obviously that doesn't mean he's like a superstar in waiting, but it does mean that when they
Right.
schemed up ways to get him the ball, he always produced. Like every single time that they schemed up ways to get him the ball, he was explosive and dynamic with the ball. So
And that's on the boundary. And you're talking about a guy who's so small, and it's, everyone expects him to be someone who works in the middle of the field, who works in the screen game, which he will also do. This is a really
yeah,
versatile guy.
Well, that's why you got the Tyreek Hill
yeah,
people going around. Like that's why you see some of that where
yeah.
people can't
Tyreek
make that
Hill is one of
transition
one.
to
Like
Hill.
that's I make.
Yeah, we're not trying to say that
Yeah,
he's going to be the next Tyreek Hill. I did see that floating around. They've been saying that in New Orleans since
well,
like he was
it's
drafted or
also the
since they
exact
signed him
same
there.
thing. Is what's the tweet that always goes around when it's like, oh, what do we have? A big athletic quarterback with horrible accuracy in college. What we have here is another Josh Allen.
It's
Is what we
Josh
have
Allen.
here. That's what we have
Josh
here.
Allen's rookie stats every year. We see it
Yeah.
every year. We get those
What we
charts.
have here, rookie quarterback that threw a bunch of interceptions. What we have here is another Peyton Manning. That's what we have right here.
Right.
Oh
Yeah,
man.
that's funny. But I mean, it does go to show what was it? The report 5 to 6 teams after Hardy, the Bills outbid them. It was said
Yeah.
that it could have been Kansas City and Denver, his old with Sean
And
Payton.
They saw something they liked, and they went and got him. I mean, I'm
They weren't
excited to
bidding
see what they
against
do.
and
themselves.
last
Trust
year
Beane
there were
about that.
teams in on him last year, and it's why last year he has a similar deal where it's like $4 million with upside to make 8. Like people are thinking like, oh, and I know as soon as they happen, what do? They go to Pro Football Reference or ESPN.com. They're like, oh my God, we just paid that money for a guy who had 2 catches for 13 yards. I'm like, no, he played for 1 game, got a freaking turf toe, tried to play through it, and then missed 13 games. Like it's not, that people need to settle down.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it floating around. Like, well, if you can only stay healthy, he had the turf toe injury, but before that, it was not. I mean, he was suspended for a few games, and he missed like a couple of games with various injuries, but not outside of
relatively available.
Yeah,
as available as any 5'6"
It's
and an all-pro returner. Do you guys replace Hines? Like, let's talk about that. What are we doing there? Are
I
we
think
going
it's
half and half?
no.
Like, what's this?
Like Harty has been an awesome punt returner, and Hines has been an awesome kick
Hines
returner.
is
Like
kick
I
returner.
think it's easy. Like I don't even think it's a debate. Like
Got it.
Harty was an All-Pro at punt returner specifically, and all his incentives are at punt return. We watched the New England game where where Hines took two
punt return and kick return are way different.
Had to barely catch a punt off his face mask to stop it being from like an all-time gaff. Like I think it's easy. I think Nyheim Hines is your kick returner. I think Deonte Harty is your punt returner, and it's done.
Yeah, I totally co-sign that. That is.
I won't.
That's what they
I
should
won't.
do.
I won't be crazy if Harty does both because they work Hines more into the offense. Like I'll be cool with that. But I
want them both in the offense, and I'm worried that if I don't think they brought Harty in to be like a full-time returner. So if you have him doing both roles, they might feel compelled to pull him back from the offense just because that seems to be what they do.
So
Jim, you got anything else for us?
One last position when you took us back to wide receiver. I was going to ask the spot that I'm not shocked has gone slowly because these guys don't want to sign. These guys might want to sign until like 2 weeks into training camp. How about the veteran pass rusher, like that third rotational pass rusher? Whether it's Robert Quinn or Frank Clark or Justin Houston or Yannick Ngakoue. Who's the guy who's out there that you would like to come in? Maybe be the starter early on while Von Miller is getting ready, but be our third guy long term. Who's calling your name?
Yeah,
Yannick for me.
Ngakoue, man.
Oh yeah, dude, Yannick for sure.
Okay. I mean, I agree. I think it'd be awesome. I mean, we probably need it to be the first year that somebody doesn't throw $10 million at Yannick Ngakoue because people wanted to throw $10 million.
I don't like it.
Year of his life.
Yeah, I don't like it for 10.
But eventually, that's going to stop. If we could get him on some. I'll give him 6 with incentives that he could earn up to 10, and we could get creative with it. But if we could get him for 6, I'd be really excited.
10 if we win a Super Bowl.
Dude, everybody can have all the money if we win a Super Bowl. All the money. All the dollars. You get all the dollars if we win a Super Bowl.
I love that.
I'll give away so much of Terry's money if we win a Super Bowl.
Just so many Lombardi coins to just in every contract, just like a little sack of Lombardi coins.
Yeah, if we win the Super Bowl, but next year we're not allowed to have a team because we literally crushed the salary cap, I'll be fine. I'm like, yeah, screw it. It was worth it. It was totally fine.
It's like Josh Allen throwing to us 3.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, I am now the second starting guard.
Oh,
but
man.
no, that's awesome. Today's been
a
ton of fun. We'll put it back out there. We'll do one more question if anybody wants to bring something up before we wrap things up here. One more question. If you want to write it, you can as a reply, or if you want to ask to raise your hand, we could try to do one more before we wrap up.
I mean, they better have one, or we're going to make you guys talk about running back. So someone better.
All right. So while we're waiting,
we could do running back.
It took me a minute to find the mute.
All right, here we go.
Sorry,
that's all good.
So another question. So when I watch all the different podcasts covering the draft, can you guys at some point do something on what is a gunner, right? Because I know what positions it would be, but I wouldn't know what was Tywan Jones or Saran Neal's demographics or stats that made somebody be able to say they're a gunner.
That's a super interesting one. How to identify? Obviously, and I mean, you brought up good examples. We've seen it from Jake Kummerow, who's a wide receiver. We've seen Matthew Slater is a famous one, who's also a receiver. Tywan Jones has had all pro level seasons there from running back. Lots of them are DBs. Most of them are DBs, where you see it from a Saran Neal type or another safety or linebacker. Mostly safeties and corners you see in that area. But
It's like late round athletic guys that you have to get in and see if they can do it. And then they do it, and then you re-sign them to deals, and people complain that you gave them too much money.
Well, I almost think the pocket you look for are those project type guys who have the super high athleticism, but you're not sure if they have the skill set to play the position, but they're definitely an NFL caliber athlete. And that's where you like Saran Neal is a perfect example where like, hey, we've now pretty much confirmed he's not a line of scrimmage defender. Like he's just not going to be a defender, but he's all.
Yeah, like if he had developed into a corner or a safety, that would have been cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, and great. That's great value then. But like what he's been, and then he's found a way to contribute by being, awesome on special teams. And that's got value too.
So like for like how do I that's the only thing I can think of is where you have the super high end athletes that the number one question is whether it's like vague questions about processing or understanding or developed route tree or maturity at the position, but that they're NFL caliber athletes. Those are the guys who stick out to me that you would still have drafted. They can stick on a roster, and that's going to be their path to it. I don't think there's that many guys that are like looking to be a gunner coming out of college and like that's what their role is, like a long snapper, a punter, or a kicker. I think almost all of them want to be NFL position players and end up being a gunner.
Yeah, but if you can make, 1.5 million a year as a gunner, and instead of like going into real estate or whatever,
Matthew Slater's probably got like $30 million in career earnings.
Yeah, I mean, Balin Spector is that guy. Like,
did you know how much money Tyler Matakevich is going to retire with, and the dude's never like played functional defense in his career? Hell, Tyler Matakevich might have $30 million in career earnings.
How many carries does Taiwan Jones have?
Well, he's got one
How many carries per year?
One big one to beat
He's got
us.
one reception that still hurts my heart. But
so Taiwan Jones wasn't extended, was he? Or re-signed?
Not yet,
he is
I don't
a free
think.
agent as of right now.
Right. So
Isaac Samalo signed, though. That was some news that just came out. He signed with Pittsburgh.
Oh, really? Honest to God, that's a really nice signing for them. Like
Pittsburgh is going to be sneaky
they
good.
That badly.
Yeah, I think Pittsburgh gets back into that like top third of the AFC.
Yeah, 3-year deal here. So to Greg's point, 3-year deal, 4 years, 4 days in. Like these guys are still going to sign. Ngakwe probably wants real money.
There's still some legit higher end free agents out. Who's the Dallas tight end? Dalton Schultz hasn't signed. Dalton Schultz is still a big. Dalton Schultz might still
sign him up.
Dalton Schultz might still get $10 million plus. All right, we got to talk about running backs real fast before we hang up.
We do.
All right, if we sign Damian Harris, it's fine. If we sign Kareem Hunt, I'll actually kind of be excited. If we sign Latavius Murray, it's fine. I will be mad if we sign Leonard Fournette. Leonard Fournette is fat and lazy and he's not good at football. But I'm gonna preface this. I think like Ezekiel Elliott gets a ton of hate, rightfully, because he's not Nick Chubb, Jonathan Taylor, Alvin Kamara, Saquon Barkley. Like so he was paid like a superstar, $16 million a year player, and he's not. But I think the fact that he's not, and the fact that he was like a second round pick in fantasy, and then people got mad, has now flipped to, he's actually complete trash and shouldn't be in the NFL. And the two things that he can actually do are the two things that our backfield needs, and he can still convert short yardage and pass block like a motherfucker. Like he is a great pass protector, and he converts every 4th and 1, 3rd and 1 touchdown. Like I secretly don't think I'll be mad if we sign Ezekiel Elliott.
I like the idea of signing Zeke. I just don't know if he's going to be.
There's no chance
willing to
He
take the
wants a
money that
$3
we're willing to
million
spend.
deal to play in Buffalo. There's absolutely zero chance that he wants that. But
like the idea of him on the team is
yes,
cool. Like I would like that.
he
But
What do you
is.
think he takes, though? What do you think he takes?
I don't know. Like I almost think it would have to take until
7?
like training camp of him not getting anything and then realizing that, oh, being that guy in Buffalo is better than nothing. But I don't see him taking our $3 million. I just don't.
Maybe in his head it's like 7, but he's actually going to get like
Oh,
5.5
he
or
absolutely
something.
thinks he's getting $7 or $8 million. He's not. I'm certain of it. He's not getting that. But I don't know when he finally does settle for the depressing deal that he's forced to accept. I don't know where it's going to be.
He and OBJ can start a support group.
Yeah, getting way less money than they think. So, like, I will be legitimately mad if we sign Leonard Fournette. I secretly won't be mad if we sign Ezekiel Elliott.
So yeah, I mean, I like that idea. I also I mean, look, if we draft Bijan Robinson, which I know is what Kevin wants to talk about, I'm not going to be mad about that either. Am I right, Kevin? Is that what you want to? Is that where you go when it comes to the running back conversation?
Bijan?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's special. Like I understand the numbers, the math, the investment. Everyone who shows why it's not a sound investment to spend a first round pick on a running back, because it's not. But he does look special. When I watch him, I see LaDainian Tomlinson. That's what I see. Like every time I watch the clips, I just see LaDainian Tomlinson, where you have that insanely smooth running style where he never slows down. Like he's always going full speed, but it's not herky jerky or like crazy cuts. He's just always smoothly avoiding people as he's just going full speed all the time. Awesome in the passing game, awesome running game. So I'd be mad and annoyed for like 3 minutes, and then I would just spend all night watching his highlights and get super excited.
I've seen Eric say on the film room twice that like when it comes to the first round picks and running backs, like when you have a late pick in the first round, it's more like a second round pick. Like because like think about how many guys have first round grades, and it's not
In the
32
best
guys.
years, it's 20, 22, 24. In the best years, it's that many. This year, everyone we're hearing is there are teams that have 13 and 16 and 15 first round grades.
Do you want to know how many teams will have Bijan Robinson as a first round
32.
grade? 32. 32 goddamn teams will have Bijan Robinson as a first round grade. You cannot fault the Bills for taking him at 27. I'm sorry.
So even some of the most stout, running backs can't be first round pick people. And so in the Bills content sphere, you have people like Bruce Nolan, who has said openly that Bijan Robinson is easily a first round caliber grade for him, but he doesn't do that because he doesn't believe in taking them there. You have people like in the broader sphere, like Mel Kiper, who has said he has him as a top 5 talent in the draft, even though he doesn't like to take running backs that high to be able to do it.
Draft Network has him second.
Yeah, Draft Network has him second. I think Daniel Jeremiah has him fifth. So some incredibly well trusted.
Russell Brown had him like third.
Yeah, he like when you just watch him and grade him objectively, he is one of the best talents in the draft. Now, you wouldn't do that for a kicker or a punter or a long snapper, but people have gone way over the top pretending like running backs literally don't matter just because, yes, they're more replaceable than you would like them to be.
There are a million running backs. There are 250,000 of 4 different types of running backs, but Bijan Robinson is like in a different tier. Like if you can get one of these guys who makes an actual difference at a position that is generally replaceable, then you have above replacement level talent on your team, and that is a net positive.
What's up, guys? Greg, Chris, Kevin. What
Tommy,
is up, guys?
what's up?
What's going on, man?
How are
Tommy?
y'all? Where's the person?
We got too many people at once.
Just waiting on that OBJ news, guys. Just waiting on the OBJ news. I'm just waiting patiently.
I wouldn't hold your breath, but it's a non-zero chance. There's a chance.
Mm.
I think it's actually not that. I don't know if you were on when we were talking about Ezekiel Elliott. I don't think it's terribly different. That I think there's a chance that he accepts our offer. I just don't see anytime soon where our offer meets what he's willing to sign for. Like OBJ will just keep waiting, and it'll be quite a while.
Did we give him an offer?
It hasn't been formally reported.
I would assume that we've made multiple offers. I mean, he came to Buffalo. He definitely he he was made an offer when he came to Buffalo. Yeah, for sure.
I want to know who gave him that $4 million offer. I don't think it was us.
I joked, but I was only half joking.
I don't think it was us. I'm not gonna say it was us.
That's what he offered Jordan Poyer.
So when he says he got a $4 million offer, though, is that the highest offer he's got?
Was he doing his tax math again?
Well, he could. Yeah, that's true, Kevin. That's true.
The same idea where it's $4 million, base, but you can earn up to 6, and this one can escalate it to 8.
Yeah,
all the different stuff like that. When I'm not joking. That is exactly what we offer Jordan Poyer. And
don't put it past the Cowboys, though. I mean, they released his medicals, so I wouldn't put it past the Cowboys.
Yeah, for sure.
Or maybe even the Jets.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I will say, I know Rodgers obviously put it out there that he'd like them to pursue OBJ.
Actually, I think I saw that wish list wasn't true.
So he tried to walk it back that it wasn't like a requirement list. It was just he tried. Aaron Rodgers likes to throw a lot of stuff out there. He tried to spin it that I was just letting you guys know players that I'm interested in or that I like or would love to have the opportunity to play with. I wasn't telling you that you had to go acquire them. He was playing semantics. He told them that list of players and would love the chance to play with them. So however you want to call that, he told them that list of players.
Okay. Makes sense, I guess.
Yeah. So I don't think that So if you're, I'm reading into your tone, Tommy. I don't want to be unfair.
No, you're good.
If your response is, we wouldn't offer $4 million because that's disrespectful to OBJ, you guys have no idea how many lowball offers teams throw out there to players all the time.
Yeah,
that is constant. True. It happens way, way more than what we know about.
Yeah, I get it.
How many offers would you say Brandon Beane made this week?
So that's the one thing that I was going to bring up when you had talked about OBJ. I think so. We check in on and touch base with a ton of players, way more than we know about
a
it.
Ton.
Like almost literally every single one. Like not the quarterbacks, but like we touch base and find out like, hey, what's going on? What do you guys look? What kind of offers you guys getting?
They got to know what the value is. They got to know where the market's at.
You don't get shocked and be like, wait, they signed for what? We would have done that. The only way to know that
they can't look at the fucking Dow Jones.
You have to check in. Now
they got to get on the phone and get on the email.
I also think teams and agents talk a lot without actually exchanging offers. Like they like, if you guys get down in the 4 to 6 range, let us know. Now, does that mean they made an offer of we will offer you $6 million per year? But they did say, hey, if you guys are looking for 8 to 10, we're probably not there yet. If you guys get down to the 4 to 6 range, give us a call. We'd be open. Does that mean that they just made an offer? It all depends on the semantics of what you call it. I think they have a lot of discussions. I think that they formally make an offer later than later in that process, in the feeling out process. So they check in with way more than what we think. It might not be as many formal offers as what.
Yeah, and they said the formal offers take 15 minutes too. Like, so once they're in range, like it's well known that the formal offer can be a 15-minute thing. And we heard this last year with the semantics around the CMC thing, where Beane said he checked in, but wouldn't confirm the second round pick, quote unquote, offer.
Correct. Yeah, and it's it's one of those things where you let's use that scenario that Kevin brought up. It's, hey, nope, we're only going to be interested if it's a second round plus, if it's second round and more picks, and we're talking second round plus a third and a fourth. And Beane's like, well, that's too much for us, but we want to stay connected because we're interested. And then they're like, nope, still there. And like then they call back again the next day. And it's like, hey, we don't really have much in that area, so we're thinking, but we still want the early day 2 pick. And then all of a sudden it's like, nope, we're actually getting offers for that amount. And Beane's like, all right, well, we're out. Now, does that mean that he ever formally said, yes, we will offer a second round pick, and if you accept it, we're in? Well, no, he didn't say those words, but he didn't keep calling back because they weren't interested for a second round pick. He kept in there hoping that it would get to their point where just a second round pick would do it. So it's all semantics. They play those games all the time.
Yeah.
How many people do the Bills have reaching out to people? Like, what's the how many people?
So obviously, I think it depends on levels of empowerment. So Brian Gaine, Malik Boyd, Terrence Gray, I think those 3 are empowered to, like, they've done the work. They divide up the pieces with Brandon Beane into 4 piles and then go out and they are like empowered to make offers all the way up to the point of, hey, Brandon, we're in and we have everything ready. We're 7 for 22.35 with Connor McGovern. You're good? All right, cool. We're in. Like, they can do work down to like the 1 yard line. Then I think you have guys who are the area scouts, guys who used to be with other teams and have relationships, guys who have relationships with agents, and they're hey, just checking in, seeing what's going on here. That.
Do you think they split it up by division?
I think they probably lean on the regional assignments because
Right.
a lot of the pro personnel guys in that staff are assigned to areas and divisions, probably regional areas for travel purposes. And that if you're responsible for that, part of your workload is building relationships with those teams also.
At some point, I really want to have a conversation about realigning the divisions to make them more regional.
Yes. God.
I want the Bills to be in a division with the Steelers and the Lions and the Browns.
That's what it should be. That's what the exact division should be.
I agree.
Hey, Greg, question.
D-Rom, if you ask about Hunter Renfro,
all right, back up. Hold up now. Kevin, Greg, and this does not include Hunter Renfro, but
I'll include Hunter Renfro.
Who is your like free agent target wide receiver, either in free agency or a trade, and why is it Jerry Jeudy?
Okay, so one, the Cover One staff is, I don't know about unanimously, but we would all be very excited about Jerry Jeudy. He's been misused in Denver. He's super quick. He would be the exact slot guy that we would need. I'm not interested at Denver's current asking price, which is a first round pick or a high second plus a player. I'm not interested in that. I put it out there that I would do Ed Oliver in a 4th. If you twist my arm, I might do Ed Oliver in a 3rd. Like, that would be like my limit of, okay, I'll do a player. It helps us clear up some space. You lost Draymond Jones. I would do something along those lines. And then I would actually go into the season. I would still want a draft pick. It would probably help me lean more towards an outside receiver if we got Jeudy, but whoever was in the draft, I would not extend Jeudy or Gabe Davis. I would play out the season, letting them both know that, hey, we're going to extend one of you guys. Let's see who earns it. And go out figure it out.
Yeah, no doubt. And if that doesn't work out, then go ahead and just, offer the Raiders Oliver and a 6th for Hunter Renfro.
I don't like the idea of trading Oliver anymore. I mean, especially when you have that, that hole at linebacker that you haven't filled yet. You're going to then create an Oliver-sized hole. You haven't signed Jordan Phillips. So
I'm bigger than Ed Oliver, so the hole isn't that
you
big.
gave Tim Settle a pay cut.
I would. So if we're going to combine that, I would actually strategically trade Ed Oliver so that I could go sign like a Puna Ford or other bigger, like, defensive tackles for that exact reason with some of the cap savings that it opens up. And there's actually a handful of defensive tackles still out there that I would be interested in. I like Ed Oliver. I'm happy with the player. I am not as down on him as many fans are. I'll be totally cool if we go into the season and just see how he plays. But we've seen what the questions were coming into the draft. We're going to see explosive stretches of football because he's an amazing athlete, and then disappearances for stretches because he's really undersized, and it's hard for him to get off of blocks because he's undersized. And we've seen that. So I wouldn't mind if we move off of him, is because I would rather have a 6'3", 315 3-tech that it's easier for them to keep linebackers clean. And there are a handful of those guys still out there that I'd live if we went and signed Matt Ioannidis and Puna Ford and rolled with those guys and just used the size to have there because they could keep it clean, even if they don't have the explosive potential as Ed Oliver.
If it's a combo move like that,
I mean, we would have to be.
I can get behind that.
And I think D-Rom, I think they just took all of his guarantees on, didn't they,
They
Greg?
unfortunately
Yesterday.
the
Sorry,
date to
D-Rom.
trade for Hunter Renfrow was yesterday. Now they paid out a big roster bonus and guaranteed his salary. It's now not impossible, but painful to the point that it doesn't make sense for the Raiders to trade him anymore. If they were going to trade him, it was before yesterday.
Right.
Well, yes, and I understand that, but at the same time, Kevin, I mean, Ed Oliver to the Raiders, maybe he's super sexy. Maybe we have that and a fourth.
Greg, you started this.
Don't discount the Hunter Renfrow. I'm not throwing it out the window
Oh
yet.
God.
Still
Now,
advocating.
well, so
My clubhouse group is in here, Greg. These are the regulars from clubhouse.
well, and I will say, not that it's not going to be for Hunter Renfrow, but trading Ed Oliver is not out the window. Like I actually think he's probably the most tradable asset on the team because he's not extended. All the salary goes with, and just like we've seen with other players, where we're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they traded him for that. There are teams who still had Ed Oliver as a top 5 prospect in that draft and will see the flashes of dominant play, which he has had, and will convince themselves that, oh, we're the team that's going to unlock that and be able to get that full potential from him. There would be teams absolutely interested. And
you got to convince Eric to do an Ed Oliver video so it gets out. Just the
do
highlights.
some of the marketing, just to put it
just
out there with
the high stuff.
just the good stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Make it
Greg,
happen.
I got a question for you, Greg.
Ready, Nick or Tommy? I don't know who.
Yeah. Do you think we draft a running back, or do you think we get one free agency?
My guess is we go day 3 thumper, that it's a Sean Tucker, it's a Muhammad Ibrahim, it's a Roshan Johnson, it's one of those guys, day 3 of the draft, maybe 4th round pick. I think Roshan Johnson in the 4th round could make some sense. I think it's more likely it would be one of those guys, but I also think so running back is a super common one that we see historically. If you guys go back and look, a whole bunch of running backs sign the 1st or 2nd week of May because they wait for the draft and see which teams didn't get a running back. And then that's when your Latavius Murray or your Dearness Johnson or one of those guys sign. So I actually think we can kind of get the best of both worlds. We can wait until the draft, see if a guy falls, obviously if Bijan falls 27 or something crazy, or more likely one of those guys who have that thumper approach of what we need fall to the right spot in the 4th or 5th round. We make the pick. If they don't, we're like, all right, fine, we'll go sign Latavius Murray for a veteran minimum contract, or Dearness Johnson, or whoever it is. I don't think we're actually going to sign a Kareem Hunt or Ezekiel Elliott or one of the bigger names that are still out there. I think it's more likely that we wait for the draft, and if we don't, we grab a guy who is, will be fine in that role, and that maybe they are, Duke Johnson sometimes and game day inactive. Maybe they are, our regular short yardage guy all the time.
And do you rule out Singletary?
Hey, Greg.
You rule out Singletary coming back?
I don't rule it out. I do think it's unlikely, and I think his team is looking elsewhere pretty strongly.
Okay.
But it's not
Hey,
ruled out.
Greg, I
It's
got a
not ruled out. It's
question.
possible.
Greg, I got a question. What about Beckham? What do you think our chances of actually landing Beckham? I'm saying around 30-40%, if not less.
I think that 30 or 40% is way higher than what you realize.
Okay.
I think it's
Way
possible.
higher?
I think we're one of 5 or 6 teams that are realistic fits. I think he has now come to the realization he is not getting a mega deal. He's not. And I think he's now coming to that realization. So now he's choosing amongst 5 or 6 offers from contenders, which are low bases. He's going to want it to be 6 or 8 million instead of 4 million, and then upside where he can earn 10, 12 million if he hits a bunch of different incentives. And I think it's possible that we're one of those teams, that we are in that running, and that a handful of other contenders will also be offering that. And, that means we are 15%, I think, is totally feasible.
Do you think
Okay.
4 million is the
Thank
highest
you.
offer he's gotten?
No way. Probably 6.
Because everyone's assuming that
Hey,
I know he
Greg,
put it out there saying 4. I don't know that it would go to my answer.
why did he say that
My
number? I don't think that he would just pick like a
no,
random low
no, no, no.
offer.
I don't think it's random at all. I think it's very, very real. I think it goes to my answer earlier of how many teams formally made an offer. Like, I think a lot of teams were like, "Oh, you're still looking for 12? Yeah, we're not going to be at 12." So they didn't tell him a number, even though their number would have been 8. But they were like, "Yeah, we're not going to make an offer because you're still looking for way more than we'd be willing to do." So I think it's that teams haven't made an offer because he's still unrealistic. I think that there are teams who absolutely wouldn't pay him more than 4.
hey, Greg, question from me over here. I hear a lot of people who, because of free agency with the linebacker market, a lot of people are thinking we're just going to go straight to draft. But I mean, I personally feel like we're going to. Brandon Beane and this team does not go into the draft with holes usually. So I feel like we're going to make a move somewhere. Like, who's left that we can, be comfortable ish with replacing, a Tremaine Edmunds with if the draft doesn't pan
So
out.
if you go back, we'll have this up on YouTube tomorrow. We did go through that in pretty good detail. We threw out some names like Anthony Walker, Denzel Perriman, Deion Jones. I do think that they make an addition before it gets to the draft. I don't think it's going to be some big name. There's not that much big names left. But I think Anthony Walker is one that I think makes a lot of sense and has been there. And that was one that Kevin reiterated as well. All right. One or two more, then I got to go to bed.
We'll open up a follow-up space too when Greg
There we
takes
go.
off
There we
too.
go.
Okay, cool.
So if you want to get anyone else,
I
on
think
in
Nick
for
was
Greg
trying to jump in
specifically.
here. Nick,
Yeah. There's one more question. You think if we don't get one in if we don't get one in free agency, we get a receiver in the draft high? I hope.
so that one I mentioned earlier as well. I actually care more about the premium investment in the draft than I do the free agent. Like I care more about a top. I'm okay with the 3rd round. I'd prefer 1st or 2nd round. I want a premium investment with that rookie scale, rookie contract control with a high end premium investment at wide receiver that is a fallback option if Gabe Davis doesn't have a good 4th year. If we start to see a step back from Stephon Diggs, if we don't see a huge step forward from Khalil Shakir, we need that premium investment there. I care more about that than free agency. Now, I hope we do both. I would be cool if we draft a guy and sign. Nelson Aguilar gets a lot of crap. He's actually halfway decent. He's just played with a terrible quarterback in New England. DJ Chark, there's a handful of guys. Obviously, Odell Beckham Jr. has got a lot of attention, but there's actually receivers I'd prefer over him. I would like both, but I care more about the premium draft pick than I do about the free agent band-aid.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
sure.
Hey, I guess one more question I have, Greg. If let's say you get the announcement tomorrow, Derrick Henry has been traded to the Buffalo Bills. What draft pick or player or compensation are you comfortable with, including contract, to get that announcement about Derrick Henry?
Oh God. So I messed around with this because on face value, I am not excited to give up any draft picks for the right to pay a 29-year-old, not only a 29-year-old, a 29-year-old with NFL record levels of usage, to have the right to pay that person $11 million a year. So I would need multiple different things. One, it would need to be shockingly low draft compensation, which Tennessee's not going to want to do. So I'm talking like a fourth round pick. It would need to be a fourth round pick. He would need to be comfortable redoing his deal to where it's a lot closer to like 2 years, 15 million, where like 5 million of it was the cap hit this year. So if you let me do a fourth round pick to pay Derrick Henry $5 million in 2023, then I'll get excited. Because he's still Derrick Henry. Like, it's still a mountain of a human who looks ridiculous and is whatever the hell he is, 6'3", 250 at running back, and would be just a really cool jackhammer. Like, that would be fun. But he's 29. He has so many carries. Like, they've used so much wear off those tires in Tennessee that, his foot injury that he had and some of the different stuff, like, that stuff just going to mount up more and more and more. So, people wanting to trade second and third round picks to pay him $11 million is crazy. That is such a high risk. Like, he would have to have another 2,000-yard season for that to pay off. Um, it would be so hard for me to find a deal that I could imagine both the Tennessee Titans agreeing to for the trade and Derrick Henry being cool with for the contract. I don't see how it could line up without me being mad at someone, and that someone is very likely Brandon Beane.
What about if all those things are equal? I'll help. I think that was D-Rum out. What if all those things are equal? Everything you just said, but the floor goes to the late 3.
I mean, so that one right there would be the same as me seeing us take Bijan Robinson in the first, where I'd be annoyed and mad for a little bit, but I'd get over it because it's Derrick Henry and he's like,
Yeah,
like his nickname's Tractorcito for a reason. Like
right.
he's a monster. Like it would be cool, and I'd get over it, but I'd still be annoyed. It's still not. I'll use my friend Bruce likes to say, like, just because it's not ideal optimized asset utilization doesn't mean it can't be fun. Like, he would
Right.
be the same thing. He would be annoyed that we inefficiently used a first round pick, and he'd get over it because Bijan Robinson's a fun player and he could still enjoy him even if he doesn't think it's, efficient asset utilization. So I would be the same way. I'd be annoyed if we
Right.
paid money and gave up a third round pick for Derrick Henry, but it is Derrick Henry, and that's pretty freaking cool.
Would you feel the same way if we got Dalvin Cook?
So very similar. And honestly, Cook's contract is a little worse than Derrick Henry's. Derrick Henry's, there's at least only 1 year left, so you have like some leverage with him on how you extend it. There's multiple years on Delvin Cook, and so Henry, his skill, his special trait is being huge. Being
Yep.
huge ages okay because he's still huge. Delvin Cook, his special trait was next level acceleration. He could hit his top speed super, super fast and be out the gate. When you lose that, it goes quick. And like I'm torn. I don't know if he just gutted through injury last year and now if he's healthy can be back and will be okay, or if and this happens with running backs when they hit 27, 28 years old.
Mm-hmm.
If that was just the cliff and he fell off it, and whoever takes him on is just going to be mad.
Right.
I would be. I think that, as weird as it is, I think there's more risk in trading for Dalvin Cook than there is in trading for Derrick Henry, and
Okay.
there's a lot of risk in trading for Derrick Henry.
Hey, Greg, the only thing I would say to that is when it comes to a Dalvin Cook, I truly think having two brothers, especially one that's like recently a rookie, right, in the same room, in the same position group, like competing with each other, like I really think that's an underrated motivational trait to even have, if it's not for Dalvin, for James, right? For those two brothers to be competing and joke around, keeping it light, you know what I mean? Trying to hold bets with each other, to beat each other for yards, touchdowns, whatever it is. I think that's highly underrated for
It's
motivation
definitely a cool
and a
vibes
good
thing.
Yes.
Like that would be a cool thing in the locker
Yeah.
room.
But the difference with Henry too, I think the difference between him and Henry is Cook has to come with a restructure.
Yeah, that's
There's
all I
just
was thinking too, Kim.
yeah, there's just the Bills aren't trading him
And
without a
to
restructure.
D-Rum's point, so it would be awesome, and it would be a really cool stories, and companies like ours that cover one, we'd get to write cool articles about those guys. But like
Yeah.
NFL athletes are such hyper competitive, like psychopaths. Those dudes work their ass off all the time. Like there would
Yep.
like extra motivation isn't a thing. Like those guys are insane people in what they already work towards. Like if or how about this? I'll flip it around. If Delvin Cook's the kind of player that he would need to get traded to a team that has his brother on it to play good, I don't want him.
Right.
And
Well,
one more
I'm not
question.
necessarily saying play good, Greg. I'm saying like did two literal brothers who are in each other's head who are saying, "Listen, I bet you $1,000 I'm getting 100 yards this game before you
Oh,
do."
sure. And like I said, it would be cool.
It's that little
Well,
touch, right? Like I'm
also,
saying, it does emotionally push and drive
you
you.
also are obviously not familiar with what happens in NFL position rooms right now. Those dudes do that all the time. They don't need to be brothers to do that. That happens all the
True.
time.
And it's as cool as it would be. I think the question is like, what is the monetary value of that? Because it's many millions of dollars that it
Yes,
would take
correct.
to get
I
that.
am not interested in trading anything if Delvin Cook gets cut by Minnesota, then I may be interested. But I am not interested in giving up anything. I mean, it's weird to think about it this way. Delvin Cook's contract is almost at the point where Minnesota would have to give away draft picks with him to get someone to take that contract on.
Yeah.
Hey, Greg, I got one more question. How much cap do we have right now, and how much do you predict will open up?
It's a good question,
That
Greg,
is
because I have multiple
that is a
numbers.
good one. So I think with all the things in play, and part of this is guessing what the Dane Jackson contract is, because they obviously agreed to a new deal to get it down from the restricted free agent tender. So I kind of split the difference and think they're at like 1.6, 1.7 instead of the 2.7 tender. I think that puts us at about 12 million ballpark. So whether it's 11 million, 12 million, wherever that falls, I think that's the range, which means right now, without doing anything else, we have about $6 million in usable cap space. Because you need
Okay.
4 to 5 to 6 in the season. We need about 2.7 million for our draft class. So we have about 6 million to use right now. But we also have enough triggers we could pull that if any situation presented itself where they want to do something, we could restructure Trey White for 5 million. We could restructure Deanne Dawkins for 5 million. We could extend Daquan Jones for and save 4.4 million. We could extend Taron Johnson and save 4 million.
Yeah.
We have multiple different spots that we
Mitch Morris too, right? They could do something with Mitch
Correct. They could
Morris.
extend Mitch Morris or restructure Mitch Morris. They have multiple
Yeah,
spots
that's
where they could
options.
create more cap space if they want to. But right now, I think with $6 million, you could still make 3 or 4 more signings in the $2 to $3 million range because each guy only bumps off one minimum guy below the top 51 contracts. So I don't think we're going to see any big signings, but I think we could see multiple more $2, $3, $4 million signings.
They should
Okay,
extend
thank you. I
Jones.
When
appreciate
do
that.
we extend Daquan
Yeah, we should
Jones?
do that anyway.
No, I was just gonna say they should extend Jones just because
Yeah.
we want him here for another year
We
at
should do
least.
that
Is
anyway.
We
it
had him in the
before
cap
or
special.
after the draft? Like,
It's possible
we
with
had him
his
in the
age,
cap
they're
special
just
deal.
waiting to do it afterwards or during the season. I hope he's played great. He was phenomenal last year. He also did get hurt at the end of the year, so similar to why they didn't extend Jordan Poyer early because the older you get, the more injuries you get. So there is some. So I am. If I'm not the president of the Daquan Jones fan club, I'm the vice president or treasurer. But even I understand that there are some reasons not to jump ahead and extend 31, 32-year-old players. Like, that's not unreasonable to wait, even if they really want to, and even if they fully plan to. It's not crazy to be like, hey, here's the kind of numbers we're thinking about. If everything's going good into week 6 or week 7, let's go ahead and extend and keep this train rolling. But we want to make sure everything's good. Like, that's not crazy. That's okay to be in that spot. Now, also, if they announce it tomorrow, I'll be fucking ecstatic. That'll be great.
I look at it like those guys can also be your in-season
Yep.
money too. So you can spend this money now,
Mhm.
and Beane can easily free his 3 to 4 to 5, whatever number he wants to use.
Trade deadline guy
in
presents
August.
itself, and they need a little bit of money. Extending Daquan Jones or Taron Johnson can be the guy that frees that money up.
All right, Greg, one more question, and then we'll get you out of here.
One more.
So I saw someone say that Jordan Poyer, by signing this new deal with the Bills, has cemented his position in the Ring of Honor. What say you?
So one, there's a little bit of a backlog because you're talking about Eric Moulds is not in the Ring of Honor, Kyle Williams is not in the Ring of Honor, so we got some guys in line ahead of him. With that state, so I don't think there's anything short of him being freaking Super Bowl MVP. There's nothing that is going to leapfrog him to the front of that line, but he's been pretty fantastic. He's been an all-pro in a Bills uniform. He's been, I think now is going to put him in almost like a 5-year captain this year, assuming he's captain again. He's right there. I would have him. He would be like next in that group for me, behind Eric Moulds and Kyle Williams. I think some people have made an argument for Reuben Brown. There's a couple different guys in that range, and I do think Poyer would now be right in that ballpark of that next group of seeing it there, and especially obviously if they do something special here and they go on a Super Bowl run, that would add that much more to it that he came back for it. But him re-signing here and playing 2 more years in a Bills uniform, I think that's totally fair, and I think he deserves that kind of credit. He's been the heart and soul of that defense in that locker room ever since. He's one of the first guys assigned here. He has been that number one. You want to talk about the process? He's the process. Went out and found a guy who hadn't had a chance to play, had been injured, came in, became his best self, and now is signing his 3rd contract with the Buffalo Bills. That's pretty special.
Listen, new stadium going up in a few years. It's an opportunity. It's a new Ring of Honor. Maybe they'll get some of that backlog taken care of. We'll see.
I like it.
All right. Listen, do you guys, if you don't already know, Greg does his own show on Cover One YouTube on Friday nights at 9. So you should check that out if you haven't already. He's got a few episodes up. That's great. That's great. He's got a few episodes up already.
Yep.
Yeah, so check him.
Greg, before you leave, can you confirm, because I'm getting a lot of flack, that signing Hunter Renfrow is still a non-zero chance? Just a non. I just want a non-zero.
Of course you would go there, D-Ron.
So I will look at it to check and see. I will say, I mean, I'm famous for the non-zero chance. So everything is the non-zero chance. You could always make an offer that the Raiders absolutely
I've got
couldn't
the
turn down
non-zero. That's all
to
I
do
needed,
it.
though.
What they guaranteed in his contract yesterday, it's real close to zero. It's 0.0000001. There's a lot of zeros. It's
But
real
they're
close.
saying there's a
But there's
chance.
always
It's
a
a
chance. There's
non-zero.
always a chance.
Kevin's gonna start another space so Greg can go to bed. So he's gonna
I'm
want to
out.
head over
I'm out.
there.
This is awesome. You guys
But
are
thanks a
Thank you,
lot,
fantastic.
Greg.
Greg.
This is
Yeah,
great.
appreciate all the
Make sure you.
questions. And now shout out for Chris. Make sure for all the Sabres fans, make sure you guys are checking out our awesome watch along parties on Playback. We've had a ton of fun over there. I know this run hasn't been what everybody was hoping for, but they've had an awesome time being able to watch together and have fun.
Yeah, we have our own room on Playback. It's playback.tv.
That's awesome. Cool.
It's
Can you start a space, Kev?
playback.tv/cover1. You guys, if we have a room
Awesome.
there. And yeah, join up there and check us out.
All right. Appreciate you guys very, very much. We'll talk to you guys
Thank
later.
you,
Go
Greg.
Bills.
Thank you.
Thank you to
Go
both
Bills.
you guys.
Later, guys.
All right, don't go anywhere, guys. We are heading right over to a new episode of the Cover One Roundup with Kyle Salagi and David Fox. They are going live. After that, starting at 9, it's the Air Raid Hour with Steve Mathis and Dave Tilton. Cover One YouTube has got you covered all night. Keep it locked right here.